you see me fine?
I think yes. Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where everything is connected. Welcome, y'all. The early chatters are in. What's up, guys? Everybody here. I'm Sweetleaf. What's up? Iyapo is a friend of mine and a very learned person, and so we are going to get right into a conversation with Iyapo. What's going on? How you doing? This is Iyapo and
Thanks for
Ngina.
having me.
Yeah. Iyapo is a good friend of mine, and I think this conversation is born out of the fact that we've had many conversations before where we thought maybe we should have had a camera on or a recording device on, because we, generally have conversations that go far and wide and touch a lot of subjects. But Iyapo is a long time activist, community organizer. What kind of things have you been involved in Iyapo that you can tell us about? Just give us like maybe a brief outline of things that you've been involved in.
Okay. So, my name is Iyapo Moyende Ngina, and my area of expertise is health and wellness. I am an acupuncturist. I have 4 degrees that center around alternative medicine in general and traditional Chinese medicine in particular. But going into the field of health and wellness was sparked by my participation in activism, in political life. And for the first part of my life as an organizer, that was in militant organizations in the southeastern portion of the country, and then we continue to evolve, and so that work has become a little bit more encompassing. So I've done everything politically there probably is to do. I've done media work. I had a radio show for 6 years called Colonialism is Bad for Your Health. I've done wellness programs, facilitated wellness programs, health fairs. I've done more, not so, I've done some more underground type shit in my past, scorched earth and that type of stuff. So, my political work has kind of been the gamut. Over the most recent years, I've hired myself out as an organizer for other people's events or programs. So because of my organizational background, I kind of, especially in the South and like the Eastern Seaboard, I'd kind of developed a reputation as an organizer, and so people would frequently, call on me to organize their events or their programs. And so that's kind of, if you can be a freelance political activist, I guess that's been my role for the last, 5 years.
Activist for hire.
Yeah, well, you got to do what you got to do, I guess.
Yep. You just, one more title to put on your business card, right? Motivational speaker, acupuncturist, activist for hire, et cetera, et cetera.
I like that kind of. I dig that.
Yeah. Well, then there you go. That's free. That's for you. So yeah, you have been out and about. Oh, give me 1 second. I just want to check and make sure that everything is happening on the end of the listeners. You guys can hear everything. Everything's good. Good. All right. Okay. Everybody's here. Great. Okay. Let's go back.
Okay.
I just needed to check that. Often I will be doing a broadcast and I'll get like 10 minutes into a rant and I'll go back and they're like, we can't hear you. Your sound is off. I'm like, So I want to make sure that's not happening.
Okay.
So you've been out at some protests over the last couple of days. All the it's obviously um, the news story, the national news story. It's taking up literally every inch of the bandwidth of news because it should. So you have been out in the streets with the protesters and experiencing having a few different experiences with the marchers. If you want to maybe just give us some stories, some insights into what's been going on, how what you've witnessed and what you've been feeling about it.
Okay. So last Wednesday, not yesterday, the week from Wednesday, I went to a Black Lives Matter demonstration in downtown LA, in front of the courthouse, and apparently the LA branch of the Black Lives Matter had been organizing this demonstration for the last 2.5 years. Well, they for obvious reasons have taken up the leadership around this question of George Floyd's death. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go down here and show support for this march. Now, mind you, I've been a political organizer for 20 plus years, and there had come a point in my life as an organizer where I had conceded that I would never participate in another demonstration. And that was about 10 years ago. When I went last Wednesday was the first time in about 10 years. As a matter of fact, the last demonstration I participated in was I was living in Sanford, Florida at the time that Trayvon Martin was murdered. And that was the last time I participated in a demonstration.
Yeah.
So understanding kind of the emotional response to what is happening right now, I thought it was important, especially being here in California. I've only been here in California about 1.5 years, and just to show face, like to show support for the local organizers or what have you. And there were, there was a lot that was obvious that stood out as foreground in that, excuse me, in that demonstration. And then, and I'll go back to that. And then on Saturday, BLM had another event in Pan Pacific Park, which is, I guess, like the Hollywood area of LA, which galvanized, I don't know, if I had to guesstimate, maybe 2,000 people in Pan Pacific Park. And then the park started bursting at the seams, and so they moved the park into a mobile, demonstration. And then Sunday, I went with some indigenous relatives to Santa Barbara for BLMSB. They had a rally and subsequent demonstration march in Santa Barbara. And then yesterday, I went back to the regularly occurring demonstration for BLM in downtown. And I made the announcement yesterday on a live that I wouldn't be attending any more demonstrations. And, and I tried to be very clear that that wasn't a condemnation of anyone, of organizers, of young people wanting to take to the streets. It's not that at all. But what my position has become after years of doing this work is that people who are in leadership positions in this movement, in every movement, whatever your bag is, whether it's climate change or missing and murdered indigenous women, or there's a whole host of issues that we have to confront in our society, that our people have to be coming to the table as leadership people, as people in positions of leadership in these organizations, to really do an honest and brutal analysis of our losses and gains as a consequence of the type of organizing we've been doing over the last 50, 60, 100 years. And to me, the kinds of responses from the state that we had been eliciting in the 1950s in particular, and in the 1960s, the marches aren't as effective as they were then. There was a reluctance by the state, I think, because they weren't used to seeing black people in the street in mass. They weren't used to black people, bucking the system and, rebelling against the normal oppressive order. So there was this kind of apprehension about how to deal with this movement that had emerged in the 1950s. Well, there's no element of surprise. The MO is something bad happens to somebody with no power. We get mad. We take to the streets. We march until we're exhausted. We wait for the, quote, system to work. It doesn't. We lose. And then we go back to work. And then we wait for something bad happens again, for something bad to happen again. And then we repeat.
Right. Well, just to jump in, don't you think, do you think the arrest of the officer who committed the murder and the other officers were just arrested, do you think that is a result of, a widespread outpouring of emotion and just people getting out and making the power structure somewhat afraid or aware? You don't think that's a direct result?
No, it's happened before. I think it's pacification.
Yeah.
I think it's social pacification. And with all you have to do is look at the last 20 years of social movements that have jumped off as a consequence of some crime by the state committed against some civilian, and look at what the outcome has been. Mm-hmm. We can go down the list of police murders and all kinds of crimes committed by the state over the last 20 years, and we can probably, if at all, count on one hand how many times the outcome has met the demands of the people in motion.
Right.
So that's what I mean when I say we have to come together and have a real hard and honest conversation about strategies and tactics that we're used to using. Do they yield us the result? Does the outpouring of energy and enthusiasm and effort by the masses yield the desired results, or is it a waste of that energy? And can we corral that enthusiasm and that human energy into something that can actually win something for the group and collectively lead us forward? These are the questions, and it might have to be, a symposium of some sort to say, what did we win from the civil rights movement?
Right.
And what did we win from the Black Power movement? What did we win from hundreds of thousands of people in the street after Trayvon Martin was killed, or during the Jenna 6 controversy?
Right.
Or,
well, very little was, won or learned.
That's
or
exactly
from those. I think it's to varying degrees. There has been. Well, we'll flip over to. Your point of pacification is a good one. Well, I'll flip over to the Extinction Rebellion things that were going on in London last year, where they actually got, they raised awareness enough to actually get Parliament to say, yeah, we're going to declare a climate emergency, and they had cities around the United States were like, we're going to declare a climate emergency. Okay, well that's some movement where there was none before, and a lot of people think like, okay, well, so they declared a climate emergency, and then what? It's an interesting point, and yes, it's a good tactic. I also heard somebody just yesterday saying something like, if you really want to control the people, you would give them everything that they wanted, right? Because then you could do anything you wanted behind closed. You could do, what I mean? Like if you give everybody something over here, right? We're going to give you Medicare for all. We're going to give you UBI. We're going to give you whatever. But we're going to keep doing dirt over here. That would be the ultimate pacification. But anyways, I see the floor back to you. But yeah, I agree. One more point I want to make, but I agree also that Extinction Rebellion talks about citizens' assemblies, and I think that would go a long way, as in the cause and the problem of racism, systemic racism, police brutality, et cetera, et cetera.
Uh-huh.
Citizen oversight should be primary, right? Like the cops shouldn't be answering to city hall or the police union, or they should be answering to direct citizen oversight, right? The citizen should have the power and the ability to sanction, to refer charges to the judicial system, for cops that overreach, right? And that should be in place. That I think personally that would be a stronger thing in place for people to actually have a direct consequence of all this activity, action, protest, et cetera, et cetera. But anyways.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. I think yesterday there was just a moment. We'd been out there for hours. I think we ended up being out there like 4 hours yesterday. And there was a moment where I just was like, I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
I was so frustrated. First of all, I have to be careful because, again, I do not want to, for what I say to be interpreted as a criticism of local organizers or anything like that, because it's not that. But what is interesting is that it's always been my frustration is, I came up in revolutionary organization. I cut my teeth politically in a revolutionary organization. And so there was a level of like organizing that I understood as like the norm. So when I left that organization and started like parlaying my skills out to other people, I just became really aware of like organizational weaknesses that existed everywhere. And it wasn't the people's fault. It was the fact that you have veteran organizations in this country who've been doing this work for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And unless you're in their organization, you aren't entitled to those skills. There's not a massive and rapid reproduction of basic organizational skills throughout communities so people can solve their own problems. They don't have to be tied to your organization, your dues-paying organization. They don't have to be in your clique in order to have the skills necessary to solve their own problems. So the thing that stood out as foreground yesterday was, man, I swear, they had to be 5,000 people out there yesterday. It was incredible how many people were out there. And this organization that has been doing this work for years, for whatever reason, did not have the foresight to have organizers from their group like proliferating the entire terrain, surveying the terrain with clipboards and pens, getting contact information, flyers saying these are the actions that we're about to be engaged in. Don't just come to the demonstration. Meet us at city council meetings. Do X, Y, and Z. Participate in letter writing campaigns. Flood the phones with what, you know what I'm saying? These are our list of demands. Everybody that's been out there for a week should have something in hand that is constantly reiterating the demands that we want to be in alignment with, that are national demands, and then our local demands. That should be on a piece of paper that should be like flooding the city right now. Every time you have an opportunity to galvanize this righteous indignation, particularly of young people, you should have some way to guide their action, to give leadership even when you can't have face-to-face communication with them. And to me, that was the most glaring weakness, is that we were out there 4 hours, but there were people out there an hour before we were and probably 4 hours after we left. And all it was about repeating the same chants, right? Saying stuff from the pulpit that 90% of the people out there couldn't hear. Right? It was, and then there was a period, man, where it felt like a party.
Right.
It just felt like people out there blowing bubbles and shit, and like, I'm telling you, those big things that we used to do in kindergarten where it was a big like tent and everybody had to stand around it, and then they'd shake it and then they'd throw it up in the air and everybody would get up under it like a big, I was like, what the fuck is going on? Excuse my French. I was like, what the hell is going on?
Right.
This is a dire situation. Black Lives Matter LA is constantly putting out statistics about police terror in the county of LA. I did not know, because I'm new to LA, that there have been 600 and now 8 murders by police officers in LA County in the last 8 years. And Jackie Lacey hasn't tried one officer. 608 deaths, not one officer tried. One officer had been brought up on 48 counts of rape and aggravated assault, and has never been tried.
Good God.
Never even been brought up on charges. So there are some dire circumstances.
Yeah.
And without guiding the narrative of these demonstrations, people come out there with their own agendas.
Yeah.
People go out there hijacking the demonstrations.
Yeah.
It's not people that are part of the protest that's trashing the city and trashing buildings. It's provocateurs. It's people who are just like anarchists and who just want to get out some rage.
Right.
It's, and so what it does is deflect from the significance of why people are out on the street in the first place.
Yeah. No, I mean, do you think that's a product? To actually call out a specific organization, but do you think that's a product of, is that a failure of Black Lives Matter to not have people organized in that way, or just short-sightedness on their part to not have, be taking names or giving people printouts of, here's our directives, here's what we're marching for, here's what we want to be said or demanded,
So it's like I said, it's not a condemnation. I feel like we live in LA, and LA has a long ass history of revolutionary activity.
Right.
So there are veteran organizations that could be providing that kind of insight for people, because BLM is a mass organization. It's not a revolutionary organization. It's a mass organization fighting like hell by itself to solve these problems, and they've been doing the work consistently in the city by themselves with no help. But I wouldn't say it's short-sightedness. Actually, my roommate and I have been talking for the last 3 days about trying to at least find a way to provide that kind of leadership, without like seeming imposing, to make suggestions about how you can galvanize long-term commitments from the energy that's being created right now. Right. So in the absence of that, and I always hesitate because I'm new in the city and people don't know who the hell I am and who is this person talking about I'm an organizer and telling me what X, Y, and Z. So I'm always very careful about offering my suggestions, but I've been doing this work a long time, and for them to be doing, and they're vigilant, right? They have been doing 3 demonstrations a week for 3 years almost. At different strategic locations. Yeah. They've been doing hard, laborious work, and very consistently. They're mothers and single mothers, and you know what I'm saying? And so, my hat's off to them. And it's been that consistent work that has provided leadership for this movement in LA County. It's been the fact that they've been consistent that helped people to understand when this shit jumped off, where to go, who to look for guidance from. Sure. And so what I'm talking about is just kind of logistical weaknesses that will not serve them if they don't jump in front of it right now. To have 20, 100 people, committed to function as security for your event, right? So when provocateurs start trying to instigate shit with the cops, you have your own security team that can handle that. You don't have a conflict with the cops. You have a security force now that can do that. You have, 100 people identified. You should be getting volunteers out of every valley. I need to see the hands of everybody out here who is going to come to our meeting on tomorrow and figure out how they can plug into this work. We need 100 people with clipboards and sign-in sheets to get contact information so we can spread this information and grow this movement. Right. These are logistical weaknesses that I've identified in the last 4 events that I've been at. I'll tell you, if I may, the event that I went to on Sunday was something else.
Oh, is that the one in Santa Barbara?
Yes. Yeah. No. Those women that organized that event, I really want to try to find a way, because I have the 2-hour rally on video, try to figure out how to get it cut up so each one of the speeches that the people gave, the organizers gave, can be put out there and highlighted.
Yes.
But that rally, Santa Barbara, is a precarious little city. It has an old Black presence that's been completely erased, damn near.
Right.
When I went on Sunday, it was the first time in the 6 times that I've been to Santa Barbara, I've seen a Black person.
Yes.
And I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah.
So when I went to this rally on Sunday and we walked up into the courtyard and there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, all the people of color were on the stage.
Right.
We look out, and I'm serious, it was probably 95% white.
Yeah.
The attendance. And so the call from the organizers at that rally was about genuine solidarity, about not just showing up when shit pops off and because you're, engulfed in the emotionalism of everybody else.
Right.
But that solidarity is about long-term commitments to partnering with people of color to change social conditions. The kind of social conditions that give rise to violence against Black, brown, and red people in this country. So it was really powerful, and they had galvanized such a control of that body of people.
Yeah.
Like, they did all the stuff that I'm telling you about. They had their own security team. They had white people that were partners with them that, kept other white people from trying to take over the demonstration. It was dope.
Yeah.
It was so well organized.
Right. Well, and it is really all about organizing, and having a clear message, a clear plan. And the messaging is really all important, right? Because I don't know, I've been seeing there's a guy I follow who's doing a lot of video of the protests in New York, and he was like, they're all white people, doing the Black Power fist, and like, he was kind of, I don't know, mocking it on some like identity politics level or something, and I was like, but isn't that the point? Isn't that the point, is to have white people involved in dismantling white supremacy? Right? That is the point. So it's like, if you don't even understand that basic premise, or white people putting themselves between police and Black protesters, white people, doing that kind of work takes a clear message and takes an understanding by, on a basic level by people who are, behind the cause and supportive of the cause, right? And it's just that kind of messaging isn't getting out there in the way that it should, and the way that in that event that you attended, right, demonstrated this is how this should go. Whereas you see in a lot of other protests, it's just random. Show up to the protest, and a lot of people hijack it, and some people are looting, there's white people looting, there's Black people going, what the hell is going on? And, right? And it's just like a big, fat mess, so.
I'm on a call. Hold on just a second. Sorry. I'm on an interview. Anyway, I was gonna say, okay, so that's really important, Kevin. It's kind of the issue of the day, is that Black, brown, and red people have been making these struggles for 100 years. Same struggle all the time. It's like the systemic oppression, systemic racism, and white solidarity has always been a fundamental aspect of that work.
Sure.
But, white solidarity has presented itself in ways that sometimes is problematic.
Sure.
And it continues to this day unless we really struggle to give leadership to the question. Like, going to demonstrations and white people trying to, hijack the demonstrations by leading chants of their own, or, white people thinking that it's somehow in alignment with what we want to be spray painting Black Lives Matter on people's businesses. I don't know if you've seen the video of the 3 Black women that were challenging these 2 white women that were masked up and spray painting all over the Starbucks, and they were like, we didn't ask you to do that. Right. That's not what we out here for. And the cameras leave, they're not going to show 2 white women doing that. They're going to say that some Black person did this, and then it's going to is going to, you know, um, compromise the significance of the struggle that we're making. Like, we don't need you to do that. And their response was, you can't tell us how to express our rage. Yes, as a matter of fact, we can tell you, because you're coming out here under the auspice of white people in solidarity with Black lives.
Sure.
So you can't come out here and set the terms.
Right.
So I will say this, like, one of the things I always mention, because solidarity is not something that should be confusing. Che Guevara said of solidarity is not a matter of well-wishing, but in the sharing of the fate of the oppressed, whether in victory or in death. You have to be willing to make the sacrifices. You have to be willing. So if there is an acknowledgement that white privilege is real, that there are spaces that you people can move in that we can't, that there are luxuries afforded to you that they are not afforded to us, we don't need you to abandon that. What we need you to do is use your white privilege as a superpower that is in line with the aspirations of Black, brown, and red people, right? Because white people sometimes will come to this conclusion that they have to be poor to be in solidarity, that they have to abandon their wealth, right? To be in solidarity. They have to become hippies or homeless. I've seen all of those manifestations. I remember when I joined the movement, there was a woman, a Jewish woman, who, you know, she was young and she was like, yeah, I want to join the movement, you know, and so she wanted to be on the front line, she wanted to be protesting, you know, she wanted to be carrying a placard. And I remember the chairman of our organization telling her, no, that's not what we need from you. What we need from you is to take your little fancy degree and go and get a job out here in Silicon Valley. And we need you to start winning those type of white people to a pro-Black, progressive ideology. And we need resources. We need funding for these campaigns and these programs. We need you to be our agent inside the systems of white supremacy so that you can help us dismantle this shit. That's what we need you in spaces we can't be in or can't get in. So,
and that
again,
yeah,
giving direction to these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of white people that are showing up to these demonstrations. This is what, making it very clear. These are the things that we need. White people's voices fall on ears that listen. We need you at these city council meetings to be making the same demands that we're making. Defunding the police, creating adequate and affordable housing for people in this city, to be ending the state-sanctioned genocide of gentrification in this city, whatever, right? We need your power and your privilege to speak on our behalf. That's what we need.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that goes to the heart too of, you know, asking white people to, you know, that goes to the part of asking white people to really look at their privilege, right? Because it's one thing to go outside of your neighborhood or, you know, go outside of your home and go like, hey, I want to be part of the struggle or want to come down and do this cool thing with you guys, right? But like if you're saying, look at your, you know, look at racism within your own circle.
Yes.
That's actually much more difficult, I think, for people to really address, you know, in your workplace or in your home or in, you know, but that's really where it needs to be. That's where it needs to happen, right?
That's the word.
Yeah. I do think I've been reading a few, you know, there have been things coming out over the last few days that I find hopeful signs. Like I think that there was a poll, you know, saying that, you know, the super majority of Americans, you know, are with the protesters, you know, are behind, supportive of, right? And that's the first time that's happened in you know, in the U.S. on a major level, right? So I think this Monmouth poll just came out, and you know, something like 70% or over 70% of Americans were like, yeah, we get it. You know, yes, this is necessary. This is real. This is a real problem. We really need to address this. And so, you know, That's a good sign. That's a positive that on a mass awakening level that people are getting the problem. But
I think it's revealing it here too. See, we've been through this before, but the difference now is people. So you and I were talking the other day about like emotional and health stuff. Like for the first time, probably in most Americans' adult lives, they've been able to sit quietly for long periods of time and like
because of the lockdown, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Shit is coming up from deep. People are talking about emotional experiences that they had in childhood that they didn't even remember. Why? Because this society keeps us so busy in the head. I got to be up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I got to work a 40-hour work week. I got to come home and do homework for 2 hours with my kids. I got to feed my kids. I got to get ready. It's this constant busyness that keeps us from feeling our emotions fully in our bodies, right? From processing and releasing. Right? So all of the stuff that's been buried deep in the entire society is coming to the surface. And it has to come to the surface in order to be healed, in order to be resolved. So I really am optimistic about what we're seeing. What we're seeing is compounded by the fact that people have been at home for 3 months.
Yes.
Now they've had an opportunity to hear who they are, not who's the media has been telling them that they need to be or what they need to believe, but seeing with their own eyes, listening with their own spirit and their own heart. They're like, this shit is really fucked up, right? This shit is really crazy. And because, because Trump is still in office, the people that voted Trump into office are still here. So what's different? How is it 70% of the population is like, this is righteous indignation, this is justified or whatever? It is because we've been at home, we've been having deep conversations, even if we don't believe it, even if we don't understand it. We've been having deep conversations with spirit. We've been having more interaction with our families because we're forced to, right? We're with our babies all day as opposed to 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours at night before they go to sleep. So there is this interpersonal exchange that is happening with the entire human population as a consequence of basically coming off grid. Well, and I think that is what is one of the things that we're seeing that is happening with this groundswell, plus the frustration that comes from it. So it's not just to hyper-romanticize what's been happening with the lockdown. It is also compounded by the fact that people have lost their jobs, people have lost their sense of security. The system that we always believe that in some way or another is benevolent and always has our best interests at heart is exposed as reckless, uncaring, and there was this compilation of frustrations that was bound to reach a peak. And that's what we're experiencing. I feel like the thing that's more hopeful about this is that now there is more of a sense of widespread camaraderie, widespread, solidarity across economic and, national boundaries that hasn't really existed in mass for a long time. The
COVID-19 thing has kind of ripped away the veneer of normalcy for a lot of people, and it's not, everything isn't okay. Like there's a lot of problems. There's some very bad things going on in the world, and this has just exposed a lot of them for a lot of people. And so it's sped up that awakening and that awareness or whatever. But even going back to Bernie Sanders, to his first run, right? Everybody was, the whole Bernie Sanders campaign, the entire media and everybody was like, why are you so rowdy? Why are you making people so angry and radical? It's like, no, you know what I mean? Like they're blaming him for the radicalization of the people. No, he's just tapping into what people are already feeling, right? He was just like, oh, hi, I recognize that. I see you. And let me address that on a real level, right? And so everybody was like, thank you. Thank you, Bernie Sanders, for saying something that was already obvious to most people. and still, the mainstream media and the political establishment is like, no, we don't see it, we don't recognize it, we cannot address it, on your level, and that's pissing people off. All people, right? Everybody's like, no, we're done. We're like, seriously, we see what this bullshit is, that it doesn't matter whether it's Trump or it's Biden, that it does, that it's all the same shit, different color, different, whatever, different day. But, I think that is fueling a lot of this, the emotion behind this, and why people are really, is this a Black Lives Matter movement, or is this something, even bigger than that, I think some people suspect that it is, right? That it's...
I just, before I forget, I do want to address that. The thing that I really am hopeful that people are careful of with this wave of motion is that we do not get sidetracked. We have a bad habit of allowing outside entities to create and guide our narrative.
Right.
And that is what is really standing out as foreground right now. Yes, we collectively mourn the loss of George Floyd, but just 2 weeks before that was Breonna Taylor.
Right.
Just 3 weeks before that was Brother Ahmaud in Georgia.
Yeah.
So there have been more than 20 people that have been killed by the police since the new year started. 3 killed in LA in the last 2 weeks.
Right.
So I feel like when we... And I'm telling you, it is a narrative that's guided by someone else, right? Because once we win, if we win, what we want to win for George Floyd's family, it is not an isolated incident. And what's happened historically is outside forces create a narrative that is about this one atrocious event, and it's always treated as these unrelated, isolated incidences that is not indicative of a foul and corrupt system. It's just a few bad apples, carrying out bad deeds.
Right. And
that all, for all intents and purposes, the system is benevolent and has our best interest at heart. And that can't be the narrative.
Right.
The narrative has to be, even as we're fighting for justice for George Floyd's family, that there has to be a sharp political analysis about our relationship to the system, our relationship to the state, and how to completely transform that relationship.
Yeah.
So that we're never having to march to defend some civilian that's been murdered by an armed tyrant, legally armed
an
tyrant.
armed thug. Yeah, right.
Exactly. And then the other thing I want to say in response to something you talked about is, your show is about climate change, and we were talking about people being at home and the compilation of frustration and the revelations that are coming from deep within, them getting to know like the deepest and scariest parts of themselves. The other thing that has come as a consequence that I just don't want to lose sight of, and I just had this thought the other day, like 2-3 weeks after we got locked up, after everybody went on house arrest, 3 weeks, the earth was showing magnificent
recovery,
bounce back signs, miraculous bounce back signs.
Yes, they've left us alone for a minute. Yes, right.
Yeah. She's like, that's all I needed was for y'all to be the fuck at home for a while. Like, let me, let me fix this shit while y'all are off the scene. But I'm gonna tell you, we're talking about emissions. I have a belief, baby, that it is not just us not driving our cars that cause that kind of rapid recovery. Them talking about like people being able to see the Himalayan mountains for the first time in 50 years because the smog cleared so quickly.
Right.
Let me tell you, this is a belief I have, and it might be a little bit witchy for the listeners, but I was like, it's not just the emissions, right? It's not just big corporations, spewing shit into the water, into the air. We have a relationship to each other. We talk about our magnetic field. Each person has a magnetic field that radiates out. It's measurable. It
Right.
radiates out about 6 feet. We talk about like people who may have elevated cortisol levels, who those cortisol levels are not bound by the boundaries of our flesh. We can actually take on the experience of others because of their hormonal imbalances. If they're,
Right.
Rage filled or sad or depressed, you walk into a room, you happy, you upbeat, and all of a sudden you're like, damn,
Right.
what's wrong with you? You know what I mean? Somebody's energy, which all that is hormones, right, and neurotransmitters, have impacted your magnetic field, right?
Yeah.
So you think about, for the first time in human history, more people live in cities than they do in rural areas. We're all so close to each other with our 6-foot, electromagnetic fields,
Right.
impacted on each other. We're full of frustration, rage, resentment, sorrow, grief,
Right.
like all these really powerful, palpable emotions. And we think that not only doesn't have an impact on each other, but it doesn't have an impact on the planet. Toxic impact on the planet,
Right.
right? So
Sure.
when people talk about vibratory frequency and how it radiates out into the universe for forever,
Right.
and we're home for 2 weeks and the earth has bounced back, like the animals start coming back, and animals that have become nocturnal to avoid us start coming out in the streets dancing, elephants in India getting drunk in the vineyards and shit, like everybody's happy
Right.
because we the hell at home.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that there is an aspect, it would be interesting to see if there are any scientific studies about our vibratory frequency, if you will call it, our corresponding sense hormones and its impact on the planet, not only on each other but on the planet, and what kind of impact that's had
Sure.
overall in the period of time that we've been at home.
Right. Yeah. And we have it's just obvious that this has had a benefit for the planet. All of us staying home, and I was just reading an article the other day that was like, well, you can't say that's coronavirus lockdown is a good thing for the planet, because that's like a right-wing talking point, or blah blah blah, or like, how dare you, it's humanist or something like that. I'm like, eventually you're going to have to admit that humans can't do everything that they want to do all the time. That's not, like, it's kind of a libertarian idea, right? Like freedom, all the time for everybody, but that means
at everybody's expense.
Freedom just to do whatever you want, no matter how damaging or how much it hurts other people or hurts the earth, and that's like so false.
That's right.
That's.
But again, Kevin, the other aspect of that is so many people are, because we're so frustrated and because we're so lost, are looking for solutions to that sorrow, right? And so we start meditating, or we start taking yoga and shit.
Right.
Or we start going to sweat lodges, or we start eating, doing ayahuasca. But there's a component in all of those things that you fucking miss. It's the reciprocity. See, in every last one of those traditions that we seek out as a quick fix to our grief or our sorrow or our frustration,
right,
the underlying theme, the connecting theme in all of those is universal reciprocity.
Right.
Freedom is not, there are constraints even with the concept of freedom, right? To show restraint in eating frees the mind, right? There's still freedom,
right?
But it means to show discipline in the area of consumption or of excesses that frees the spirit or frees the mind, right?
Yep.
Showing sexual restraint for a period of time heightens your ability to see when your partner, right, might, or a potential partner is good for you or not good for you, right? The sexual, quote, constraints of being monogamous frees you up to be more expressive with a partner that you trust, right? So with constraint comes certain liberations, but because we are a nation of consumers obsessed with excess, right, we automatically equate freedom with I'll do whatever the hell I want, And
I
that's
can
why
have
I
it
was
all.
telling you.
Right.
Yes, that's why I was telling you about that damn that survey on slaveryfootprint.org.
Right.
It is indicative of this reciprocal relationship, this direct impact that our habits have on other people, not just on other people, but the planet. And so when you look at Hinduism or Buddhism or Native traditions or African traditions, the overwhelming theme in all of them is about universal reciprocity. For every action, there is a reaction. For everything that you receive, you must give, right? Whether that's to the planet, whether that's to another person. When you become blessed, you have a responsibility to bless another.
Right.
Reciprocity, and that's the thing that Americans haven't gotten a grip on.
Right, right. And also, all of those things that you mentioned that people might want to go out and do to become more spiritual or, connected with themselves and blah, blah, blah. We were talking also about importing other ways to live or cultures or ideas about how to live instead of exporting our lifestyle to other. We're so involved in like everybody should live like us and have our things and do our things and go, they should all be American robots, right? But those are only superficial. Like the things you're talking about, I think, are things that people superficially involve themselves in, right? Because they're living this lifestyle, and then they go, oh, let me go take a break by immersing myself in some other culture for a second, instead of actually living that cultural, actually studying that lifestyle, studying the ways in which they interact with the earth and with the environment, their day-to-day living standards or habits. Like those are the things that you should be importing, not just like, oh, I went and did some ayahuasca, it was awesome, dude, I saw so much, whatever.
Yeah.
But
oh my God, yes.
And that really isn't something that's talked about all that much, right? You just don't hear it because our standard of living is the standard by which all other things are measured. So that, we would go a long way if we could end that standard of measurement, right? It's like
right.
It's like our gross national product or gross domestic product, what we measure our wealth by, instead of other countries have started to adopt what's gross domestic happiness or a well-being
Wow, yeah.
chart, right? So I just I think that people really need to we're just starting to, on a national level or on a even on a media level, engage in some more enlightened thoughts and ideas, but there's so much more we could do, so much farther we could go, and we're gonna have to go a lot farther if we're actually going to address the problems that are, deep rooted, deep seated, structural. Right? When we talk about structural racism, I think that people don't even really understand what that means, right? The structural, people see it as interpersonal
right,
interpersonal relations, right? Racism as how we treat each other, on a personal level. But structural racism is, something that's been in place for hundreds of years, right? So you don't even see it. You don't even, just like our standard of living, you don't even recognize it as oh, that could be wrong the way that we're living. Jeez,
absolutely, yes, 1,000 times yes.
Let me check in to see what is going on with the chat people. What's up?
Hopefully, I haven't run your followers off.
No. They're all here. I think I'm actually showing a viewer count this time. Is this correct, guys? 66 viewing, 38 likes. Anyways, guys, I hope you're all enjoying this conversation with Iyapo. We are going to go maybe a couple more minutes, and then we'll wrap it up. Hold on, I didn't mean to do that. Sorry, I got too many buttons and things going. I got lots of apps going. All right, here we go. Anyways, yeah, so what you were saying that you weren't going to engage you were kind of done engaging in marches for the time being.
Yeah, that
Well,
doesn't mean that I am not going to be doing organizational work around this issue. There's an event that I'm attending today on the importance of Black and Brown unity.
yeah,
So I just, I just choose to harness, you know, my energy in a way that I know that can be more directly impactful and immediately impactful. And what I would like to see happen is like real old school style, like coalition work, coalition building,
yeah,
where people can organize around principles of unity that allow them to maintain organizational autonomy, and still come into a unified body to say these issues, these 10, these 12, these 15 issues are issues that we can all work in unity with, racial lines, economic lines, and all of
right,
these things that create these divisions for us. That if we all are affected by these 12, 15, whatever things, that if we come together and pull our forces together, we can probably make some evolutionary leaps forward on the issues that impact all of us.
yeah. I agree. I think the conversation needs to just continue, and the organizational part of it, I think, is something that is a difficult one because there are so many like fractured organizations kind of doing work over here, and there isn't really we've also moved into a time where all these movements don't really have like a leader to focus on, or one particular figure, or or one kind of monolithic movement or structure. For whatever reasons, we could probably have a whole other hour-long conversation about why that is. But I think that the means and the medium is out there to continue to like organize and build it. We have social media, we have people being able to put forward these ideas and put forward ways in which we can coalesce in a more healthy way, in a better way, in a more productive way. Where can people find you and your work? I just want to let people know, let the viewers know, like where they can find you or how they can help you in your endeavors.
Okay, so I'm on Facebook as Iyapo, Iyapo, Ngina, Ngina. That's on Facebook and Twitter, Iyapo Ngina. And then on IG, Moyende Creations is one word, Moyende Creations with a K. And also on IG as release.heart.center. And then my email is iyapoengina@gmail.com. And I respond to any contact pretty quickly that people send out. And so we do have some things in the work, more kind of behind the scenes things that a few local organizers and I are at work on. And so if people are interested in how they can participate or how they can get plugged in, they can contact me in any of those ways.
Okay, cool. And anybody on the channel who wants to contact Iyapo you can also ask me, so I can pass along her information. Also, Iyapo does like lots of cool live Facebook kind of talks. Every once in a while, just they're kind of spontaneous, but that's also like I like Iyapo's live streams that she does on Facebook. There's lots of good content there. So anyways, Iyapo, thank you for joining us today. I appreciate you. And we're going to do this again. This is kind of just an extension of like a lot of conversations that we have just in life in general. So thank you for coming on and doing this little maiden voyage with us at Black Bear News.
Oh, great.
And we will talk with you again. I'm going to... what am I going to do? I don't know what I'm going to do. Hold on one second. I'm gonna actually sign off this live stream and see if anybody has anything to say. Y'all, thank you for being here. I appreciate you.
This was great.
I see all the faces here, and thank you for listening in. What I'm going to do, I'm going to put this live stream on private for a second. I may either upload another video for this whole, have this whole interview as its own video, or what I might do is actually, I'll put this on private and then maybe I'll put it on public again in a couple hours, because what YouTube does is they'll demonetize a video like right away, and then they'll like look at it for a second, and then they'll remonetize it. So I don't know what I'm gonna do. Something, you guys will see another video in maybe another hour or so. You'll see this video in one form or another. But thank you guys for joining in. I will be back tomorrow at the regular hour at 11 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. And until next time, peace.